maybe if the next thing I want to learn and grow and be good at is not in this same place, I have to give myself permission to change. Who do I want to matter to? Well, that's going to drive where I apply my skills and my talents. You're part of a group project, whether you like it or not. And the group project is affecting you, and you are also affecting the group project. If you keep living in a way where you're trying to please the people or convince the people who are immediately around you who have not been supportive, you're keeping a cage up around you.
Hey everyone, welcome to Flow Over Fear. So glad you're here today. I have an exciting guest and I'm really thrilled. I've known Kiesha for a while now, and I'm really inspired by the work that she has been doing. Kiesha Garrison is the founder and CEO of Hey Black Seattle, a company that supports people of the African diaspora in finding the cultural experiences and community resources they need to thrive while living in the Seattle area. With a 20-plus year career that has spanned technology, media, and performing arts, her overarching mission is to connect people to the insights, resources, and experiences they need to thrive to their fullest expression. Kiesha's career has spanned over 2 decades in leading technology companies, including Vitals, Microsoft, and Time Inc., where she was focused on business development, communications, and culture. And she also served as a founding board member for the Live Music Project, an organization that supports access to the arts through community-centered nonprofit tech, specifically a free community-driven calendar for thousands of orchestras, ensembles, choirs, schools, and independent musicians. A devoted student of humanity and self-actualization, Kiesha's work as a performer and speaker focuses on highlighting the ways that systemic oppression stifles personhood and weaponizes culture. She leans on this insight when guiding learning experiences as an MC and moderator, having interviewed many well-known subjects like Will Smith, Lenny Kravitz, Ed Catmull, and countless corporate, nonprofit, and community leaders. And this is also the focus of her work as a comedian, a poet, and host of the self-discovery podcast, You Better. With Hey Black Seattle, the Spelman alumna hopes to honor creative tenacity of Black Seattleites and contribute to a sense of well-being and hope in this region that she and her daughter, Lauren, have called home for the past 10 years. Kiesha, is that all?
Just a few things.
Yeah, just a few things.
I'm a little busy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you sure are. And I mean, I think that there's that a lot of those things are really exciting things. I mean, you're doing such good and big, world-changing things in your community and in the world, and it's incredible to see that. It is incredibly inspiring, and I want to kind of work backward and see how you got your start in a lot of that. I mean, you started with technology companies, becoming a leader, learning leadership in there. But how did you get your start there, and what drove you to move into the work that you're doing now?
Wonderful. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here on your platform and having an opportunity to speak with everyone in your audience. Let's see, I'll take it back. Even before technology, I had a career in the media publishing industry. And I was there for about, I would say, a bit of close to a decade when I noticed that the world was changing. And I noticed that things in the magazine publishing industry just got really tight. Every single year we were facing a lot of stress, but I saw the digital part of our business really growing and growing. So I took an intentional turn to jump out of the media publishing industry and go into technology. So when I started, it was a bit of a pivot, and I was basically relearning an industry after I thought I had started my career. I restarted it 10 years in, and went into technology.
Well, I would love to talk about pivots a little bit, because there's a lot of people who maybe feel like they don't belong in a specific industry, or they maybe they're doing work that doesn't fill them up, and that leads to a lot of that fear and that anxiety. Can you talk a little bit about the fear of that change? Maybe some of the emotions that you've gone through during that process of transition.
Yeah, and it's something that I've really touched on a lot in my career, because as you read that bio, you saw there was technology, but then there was also the stand-up comedy and the stage performing. Every time that I've made a change, I've had to go through that cycle of feeling the discomfort of knowing that something was either missing or something was a little bit off.
Mm-hmm.
And then being willing to actually act on that information, actually be willing to feel it. Because I think that sometimes what happens, or I've seen people that I've spoken to, there's the reflex to not just make the fear go away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to feel this. I'm uncomfortable. Then maybe there's something wrong with me. There's an internalization of the uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
What I do when I feel that uncomfortable feeling is I ask myself, what do I need? Like, what is it that I need right now? What's happening for me? I'm feeling like perhaps I've taken a certain industry or a certain role as far as I can go. And maybe this uncomfortable feeling I'm feeling is telling me that it's time to find what else there is for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because my approach to starting something is usually not, what can I do here? It's like, what can I learn? What new skill am I going to pick up? How am I going to grow in this moment?
Right.
And when I get to a point where I feel like, okay, I think I got that thing. And maybe if the next thing I want to learn and grow and be good at is not in this same place, I have to give myself permission to change and go to another space. And I try to be courageous in allowing myself to kind of go to a new space and be a bit of a freshman all over again.
Yeah, that does take a lot of courage to make that kind of change. And you mentioned something about asking a question. I love that perspective, because I've heard it a lot on this podcast from a variety of people, including you, that there's questions that people ask themselves when they get into those situations of fear, and it almost, that curiosity helps lead them through that journey of fear. Do you find that to be true, or has that been your experience?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Curiosity is at the top of the charts for me in how I move through life. The biggest question that I ask myself in the shift that I've made in my career in the last, I want to say 5 years, when I was deciding to leave my position at Microsoft, the big question I asked myself was, who do I want to matter to?
Mm-hmm.
Because Microsoft as a company has a mission to empower every organization and every company in the world to do more with technology. And I was starting to feel myself wanting to do more things in the community, having a little bit more of a personal impact on people's lives. And when I thought about, well, who do I want to matter to? Well, that's going to drive where I apply my skills and my talents and the things that I've learned and all the things that I know how to do. When you get really sharp on who do I want to matter to, it really changed where I wanted to apply my energy.
Yeah. What was your answer to that question of who do you want to matter to when you asked yourself that question?
In the beginning, when I asked that question, I felt a pull to matter more in the impact I was making on my daughter's life. During the height of the pandemic times, my daughter was not doing great, just socially and emotionally navigating that. I needed to matter more in the impact I was making to her. But when it comes to the world, I wanted to matter more to people who were suffering the impacts of systemic oppression as far as I understood it. And so I said to myself, I have to learn more about what are the other impacts, and I have to figure out how I can make a difference.
Yeah.
And as a person I'm a 44-year-old Black woman living in America, I see a lot of opportunity to impact people who are suffering the impacts of systemic oppression, but I don't have to look very far to see in the Black community that I'm a part of, there's a lot of work that can be done there. Mm-hmm. So I said to myself, all right, Black folks centrally, marginalized communities more broadly.
Right.
And I started thinking about this basket of skills that I have in a career in technology, a stage performer, what are all these things? How can I apply them for the betterment? But I really did initially, that's when I started building the You Better platform.
Yeah.
That you mentioned, because it's very direct. It's about you, individual person who lives in a world that's trying to make you into something else that can serve a machine type purpose. How can I impact people one-on-one? And so that was kind of where I began in that let me matter more to an individual in their life. And that's how the You Better platform got birthed.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the You Better platform because I love the philosophy that you have there. And I know that you're focused on kind of loving ourselves, right? And can you talk a little bit about the philosophy there, especially as you went through who you want to matter to? There's within the communities that you serve, we have a lot of noise and there's a lot of blind spots, and I know that I fall into that too, just like wanting to learn more, but feeling like there's just so much noise. There's so many things that maybe I don't understand. And I guess my question is how, so with You Better, how have you been working to approach that from the individual standpoint? Because it seems like that platform, you're focused on the individual, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I look at, it's called You Better, and you is the verb, where I want people to be even more of their full self. And my approach to that work is addressing all of the forces that work against us being ourselves. And it's meant to put into context for people what it is that's making it so hard for you to be yourself, and why it's so important for you to actually discover who that really is so that you can contribute to society and culture in a healthier way. Because what happens is, let's say you sign up for some toxic stuff and you're like, well, I got told this was how to be great.
Yeah.
How I can be great is something that it feels terrible, but I heard this was the way, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Over time, then you just continue to put that into the world as the way, because now you're not just standing on the fact that you signed up for it. Like, someone else has to do it too, to validate, like, I've invested all this time in being this way. Other people need to do it too, or else I'm going to feel like I've made the wrong choice. So you perpetuate and put back into the culture the thing that you signed up for, even if it hurts you. And I want people to stop doing that. I want people to recognize the thing that hurts them. I want them to admit it and acknowledge, like, this doesn't feel good. This box that I signed up for, this restrictive ideology, this family norm that perhaps I never agreed with, but my whole family feels this way. I want people to give themselves permission to say, that actually doesn't feel good to me. My life is less happy because I signed up to do it that way. And I'm going to stop. And every time you free yourself, then you actually become a contributor to a little bit more freedom for society. And so there is so much work to do to get people free all over, but I'm more focused on the inner work that a person has to do to get free, because I do think that that's one way that we can just like kind of make this simmering bed of fertile ground for all this work, these programs that people are creating, and all of these education and all these programs. I think that individually, if each of us asks ourselves some searing questions about what really hurts in your life, are you willing to confront it and move past it so you can stop perpetuating it in the lives of others? And that's where it comes from. And so in the interviews and the conversations that I lead on the podcast, my hope is that I'm finding people who have gone on a sort of journey of that in different types of lives, different spaces. And people can listen to the questions that someone else had to ask themselves when they were breaking free from something, or when they were choosing a different path for their lives. And then I also kind of do workshops. I do workshops along these lines to kind of help people have a guide and a nudge towards asking themselves some of these more difficult questions.
Yeah. But would you say that and I love that approach, because it seems like you're taking the thing that everybody seems to be trying to fix more broadly. Like, broadly we're fixing all this stuff, but you're narrowing it down onto the individual. Like, let's figure out why you're hurt first. Figure out individually what's hurting you, and reflecting it from the inside out almost is.
Yes. Yeah. There's a poet whose quote I use in the beginning of my workshops, a poet Alok, and they say, who did you have to be to survive in this world? Or like, what did you have to bury about yourself or destroy about yourself to survive in this world? I'm getting the quote all butchered, but the essence of it is, what part of me did I have to destroy to survive in this world. And when people are bringing someone in to talk to their employees, that's not like a question they're used to getting asked in that setting.
Yeah.
And so we have to sit with that for a second. And I let people anonymously kind of just answer it if they want to for the group, so people can start to see what other people have been going through.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very opening question where you actually inner reflect and say, I did want to be a painter, but I stopped because, and then you have whatever strange reason the world told you weren't supposed to do that thing, whatever obligations, whatever fears, whatever guilt you had that sent you in another direction,
Mm-hmm.
away from something that just brought you joy. And I try to get people either back to or into a new space
Yeah.
of the things that actually light them up.
Yeah, I love that. So is it, and is it fair to say, or am I understanding it correctly, that more broadly, the oppression we might be seeing, or the pain that we might be seeing on that broader level is brought forth by the individual pain that we're experiencing and that we're putting out into the world? Am I understanding that correctly?
It's really that we are culture.
Yeah.
When we say these, we'll say, oh, society, or like culture, or the world. Those are just big collectives that mean each of us.
Mm-hmm.
We're all contributing something to what culture and society actually is. And so you bring to that group project the level of healing work or the level of going with the flow work that you are individually doing. And so we wanting people to process that it can't just be an individual journey. So I see a lot of self-improvement, self-development. Yeah, there's work for the self, but you have to understand that you're part of a group project, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And the group project is affecting you, and you are also affecting the group project. And so I want people to recognize both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to do your work, but don't think you got that way by yourself.
Yeah.
And don't think you're not impacting the people around you.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so what kind of tools or maybe one or two kind of like ideas that maybe you could put forth that of how people can balance those two aspects, themselves, like their individual personal development or growth or healing, and that cultural or community based healing. How is that balance, or is there anything that you would suggest? What do we need to do?
Yeah, I don't know if even balance is where my brain goes when I think about it. I think more about we're in a space of having to acknowledge and embrace that there's work to be done there.
Mm-hmm.
So we are in a very we get encouraged to be like, oh, can you survive in a fast pace, environment? And there's so many elements that go into keeping a life running. We are distracted from the actual time of quiet and self-reflection.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of space to hear our own voice. And so it will take intentional work to pause and ask yourself questions. Like, instead of being on social media and wherever we are putting out ideas, how often do we stop and say, I have some questions for myself, just about me and who I'm trying to be and how I got this way. So a little bit of like interview yourself or have a friend interview you. I learned so much just talking to friends, but there needs to be some time that outside of school that you revisit who you're trying to be and how you got that way, because that's when you learn what you might need to adjust. And then on the community side, I really found that it wasn't until I actually read about systems of oppression that I actually got an understanding of how the effects really play out for people who aren't me. I only have one slice of what life is. I have the perspective of that gathers all of the experiences I had. It's really hard for me to just in my head sit here and be like, I'm going to think about how I impact the community. You actually have to read about the other fallouts from these different systems. You might be like, I am a capitalist and I love it. If you're interested in learning about how systemic oppression affects other people, it would be a good exercise to sit and be like, well, what do people say are the other side of the impacts of a capitalist society? Who's hurting from it? what does that mean? And then you can think about how you're contributing or not. And so I think that there's just some commitment to learning and study,
Mm-hmm.
and then going out and perhaps being with humans who don't necessarily share your life experience so you can get their perspective.
So being kind of open-minded to other sides
Yeah.
of what you kind of entrenched your beliefs into, like originally, or however
Yeah.
however they did. I love that idea of curiosity plus community. That's kind of what came to my mind as you're talking about that, like just asking questions and finding the community of support, or maybe the community that challenges you. Is that part of it too? The community that challenges you on some of these aspects, being willing to engage in that dialogue?
I think that there's a piece of it that's the challenge, and that some of that you can do by listening to podcasts. Like you have people on, or my podcast, where you don't know that I can't just jump into a new community and be like, I'm here now.
Right.
But you can listen. There's tons of content where people are sharing what's going on for them. You can listen. But there's another part of it that is finding the community that you need to give yourself the permission to keep being who you can be. So, for example, let's say you decide, I'll go with the example of you're a new person who is embracing your queer identity.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, if you don't have supportive people around you for that, and what you have realized about yourself through the self inquiry is that you were suppressing that part of you because you didn't think the people around you would accept it. Okay. Once you actually come to awareness about this is why I've been suppressing it, probably knew that. What am I going to do about it now? You have to go be in community with other people who share your vision for the world and your vision for what feels right. Because otherwise, if you keep living in a way where you're trying to please the people or convince the people who are immediately around you who have not been supportive, you're keeping a cage up around you.
Yeah.
That is a cage that keeps you from living in your fullest self-expression. So the more you like, okay, I'm going to step out of this and I got to go be around other people who share my vision for the world and what we can be, and people like me. And it kind of, it gives you a little boost of like, oh, I'm not alone. There's possibilities. It feeds that confidence you have to keep exploring the part of yourself that you have been denying for so long. And it actually just makes life feel better because you feel less alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I mean, and that's so relatable to, I'm sure, to a lot of people that may be listening, in terms of once you find that community that you feel like you've been missing for so long, that is part of you, that kind of, that embraces the real you. Oh man, it feels freeing, doesn't it?
It does. It applies in so many ways. If you've been on a track with like, my family is a lineage of doctors and I had to be a doctor, and then you went to medical school, and it's just like all of a sudden you have this huge community around you of medical people.
Yeah.
And if you're miserable, the thing you need to do is be like, well, what makes me happy? And let me go find the people who do that thing and experience it with them in community. And let me see them giving themselves permission to do that thing. And over time, your confidence will grow and your joy can have a chance to grow.
Yeah.
But don't keep yourself in the cage because you're like, I am making sure that I maintain these relationships with people who actually are like, well, we're not quite interested in who you really are. We're just interested in run the play.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, the podcast that Kiesha mentioned is You Better, which she runs, and it's on all of the podcast platforms. Check it out. It's on YouTube and Apple and all the good stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I only have clips on YouTube, but all the audio podcast platforms, you can find it there.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So check that out after you check this interview out, and make sure you subscribe and rate that one as well.
Thank you.
And so there was, that first switch into the technology career wasn't, you switched, you even made another pivot into a new career, emceeing and hosting and moderating and getting to the point where you're interviewing like just A-class celebrities, Will Smith, Lenny Kravitz. How did that come along, going from a technology leader, to being on big stages with big personalities? Hey everyone, I interrupt this program to introduce you to a powerful tool that will help you gain clarity on your vision and accelerate your growth and achievement. If you're listening to this show, it is likely that you have an exciting vision for your life. But the problem is that we often get caught up in the day to day. We get distracted, we face uncertainty, overwhelm, and self doubt. And as a result, the gap between where you are and where you want to be seems insurmountable. And that's why I created a framework for how you can turn your vision into strategic, disciplined action that will accelerate your results in the next 90 days. I call it the Vision Reflection Retreat. It is a 2-day solo excursion designed to reignite passion and adventure into your busy life and realign your focus toward your why. This is the very same framework that I use every 90 days to reflect on my own life and my vision and set my goals for the next quarter. And it has been a game changer. And the good news is that I'm giving away this Vision Reflection Retreat guidebook for free when you sign up for my newsletter. Simply go to flowoverfear.com/retreat and download your free guide and enjoy the journey.
Oh yeah. So at the time that all of this began, I was at Microsoft and I was working as a partnership negotiator, negotiating AI technology partnerships between Microsoft and other companies all over the globe. And there was a moment where, let me see, before I got to Microsoft, I had not quite ever been in such a big pond before. So I have a performer spirit. I was always able to speak to the company at places that I had worked before. And then I got to Microsoft. That's an enormous place. And my opportunities for public speaking they were just gone within, as soon as I joined. And I didn't think that, I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to public speak in this environment. So there was a moment at dinner with my little girl, who was 7 at the time, where she was sitting there with me, my partner at the time, and my sister. We were talking about our bucket list and all the things we wanted to do, and I was reflecting on my experience at Microsoft. And how I hadn't been, I think I had a chance to do a speech one time and it went really great. And I was like feeling fired up. I was like, when am I going to get to be on stage again? So I was telling the family that on my bucket list was getting back on stage, and I wanted to do stand-up comedy as my way to kind of do that. It had kind of been simmering in the back of my head and I hadn't acted on it. But I thought, you put yourself on stage when you're a comedian. You're not auditioning for a play, you just go. And at the time, my then partner, super practical dude, he was just like, well, telling me all the reasons why most of the things on my list, he was just like, well, what about this and this and this? And the 7-year-old child at the head of the table says, Mom, let your dreams be free.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so sweet. The 7-year-old, I touched her hand. I was like, thank you, baby. And after dinner, she said, I want to talk to you in my room. I said, okay. So she, like, little 7-year-old, walks me down the hallway, takes me in her room and closes the door and has me get down at eye level with her. And she put her hands on my face and she said, I just wanted to make sure you heard what I said at dinner. I said, let your dreams be free. I was feeling like this is a spooky situation. I feel like I'm being spoken to from beyond or something. But the next day, I signed up for a stand up comedy workshop because it felt so urgent the way she was speaking to me. I signed up for that workshop and didn't look back. I immediately started doing stand up comedy throughout the Seattle area and loved it. I loved stand up comedy. It's so hard. I feel like I'm going to throw up every time I do it, but I love it so much. And then what happened was people at Microsoft saw me doing that around the city. And then they said, when the Will Smith opportunity came up, they're like, oh, we have somebody in the company. We've seen them out in the world who can handle a big personality like that and knows our company really well because I'm like out here representing the company, negotiating partnerships. So they tapped me to do that interview. And then it was kind of like gone from there.
So cool. I love that idea. And all of that, by the way, the ability to be on that stage with Will Smith and beyond, getting to that came from your daughter having the courage to tell you to follow your dreams. And by the way, what a beautiful expression of that. Let your dreams be free. That's so beautiful.
I wrote it on a chalkboard, and it's just up in our living room. It's like the family
Yeah.
mantra now. I'm gonna put t-shirts for her and everything, like all the time. It's like, let your dreams be free. And it really taps into, as I mentioned, my desire for individuals to be free. But the fact that she had the courage to even say that, kind of like in opposition to her dad sitting at the table, and she's like, okay, that's his contribution.
Yeah.
She was a pretty bold kid, but it's really a driving force behind how I live my life now.
Yeah, and I would even say to the audience, whoever may be listening to this, who has kids, I have 2 kids of my own, and I think of that frequently too. Is like, well, what are my kids not saying,
Yeah.
but that they're seeing, and that they're interpreting, or they're internalizing, and that are becoming their paradigms, like, for what it is are they seeing me doing this thing that maybe doesn't fill me up, or that I want to pursue other things that I'm putting off because of this. It's like, your kids may not be saying that, but they're thinking it, or they're coming to believe it. Does that influence what you want to become, the courage that you're able to bring to the world? That's so huge. That gave me chills, by the way. So
Yeah, it always gives me
Yeah.
chills. The kids are fresher. I had been living with that list of things for years.
Yeah.
There was all sorts of stuff on that list. It was I wanted to go to Singapore to see some specific public art there, because I love public art. And the next February, I went to Singapore. I just went. I had never left North America for personal reasons before that. But once my child just said to me, like with her pure heart,
Yeah.
let your dreams be free. Like, who's it just so many questions for me, like what's between me and this thing I said I wanted.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if it's really not anything insurmountable, why not do it?
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. And so let's talk about the stand-up comedy too, because that's terrifying. So that's something that's on my bucket list. And interesting, Leslie, we talked offline a little bit about this. I just started doing my own comedy workshop, not mine, but a comedy workshop. And
Yes.
so, towards the goal of, one day I want to do an open mic night, and I have the goal this quarter to do that. But it's terrifying. I mean, I was at a comedy show last night, and just watching these other comedians up there, just like crushing it. And some of them were just like amazing. And I'm like, you could see the confidence in that. And I know someone like you has that, confidence that you bring, but still terrifying. How did you manage that fear of, like, I want to throw up every time I get on stage? And
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna check back with you to see if you did it. Like, I'm gonna write on my calendar this quarter. Adam said he was gonna do it. It is truly. I remember the second time I got ready to go on stage, and someone who had done the workshop with no, he had performed at my kind of graduation show. He saw me before I was about to go up, and I told him, I was like, I feel sick. Is this ever gonna go away? And he was like, No, it's not. Um, and that first time that I got on stage to do comedy, I remember sitting there thinking, nothing's in my head. It's all gone. Everything I thought I wanted to say, because I'm there's different ways that you can approach comedy. And I like to I know what I'm about to land. I'm planning. There's a reason behind all the things that I'm about to say. Well, that first time I got ready to get up, I just felt like everything left. And then they called my name, and I was like, well, okay. And then I got up there, and once I got the first line out, everything else just came. And then I felt like I'm hooked.
Yeah.
I am a comedy person. But I think that getting over the fear, I think that was part of the fun for me, was just being another moment to make myself proud, like having a moment to exhibit courage in that way. That is a driving force for me. So it's like, am I going to make myself proud in this moment? Does what I want to land mean something to me?
Yeah.
If it's just like I just want to have a shiny moment up in front of people, that won't do it quite for me. But I have a lot of, I want to move people with the things that I'm going to say. And if I'm going to be a proper vehicle for those words and for that message, I have to get over myself.
Yeah.
And I have to get over my body's all of the impulses that are saying, girl, don't do this. Why would you do this? Why would you try to make people laugh? But if I can get past it, then I can actually achieve the goal that I have to land these cultural commentaries that I want to make and bring people joy. Like, once you actually do achieve that moment where you make people laugh, it's like, oh, I am a magician.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you framed it that way because we all have, I don't want to speak for everybody. I have, and I know a lot of people have that voice in our heads that tell us you're not worthy. You can't do this. Look at them. They've been doing this forever. You're not one of them. Come on. You have that voice. But as you say, like that if you're bringing that joy to the world, you're depriving people of that if you aren't doing it, if you aren't leaning into that fear. And that comes in all varieties, whether it's getting up on stage, stand-up comedy, speaking, or what have you, or getting in front of a microphone like we are now, or just doing something that is beyond what you believe. Do you kind of just believe that voice is something that does that voice go away, or does it for you go away?
Here's the thing about that voice. It doesn't go away, but I think that there's two things that I think of that need to happen when we hear that voice. One is we have to stop overestimating everyone around us. and two, stop undervaluing the work we need to do to rise to the occasion we want to rise to. And so by those two things, for the first one, I feel like there's a reflex, or I had to get over the reflex to assume that people had these natural gifts that they just step into the scene and they just got it. And I don't have it like that. I think that you will find that a lot more people had to figure out how to be the thing that you saw before you saw it. And you are now, by the time they're in front of your face, you are seeing the results of either their incredible hard work, or you are seeing the results of some incredible nepotism of some sort. So it's like, don't just assume that they just stepped on the scene and now they're just able in a way that you somehow are not. And that brings me to the second thing that I said, which is stop underestimating the work involved. There's some boring, gritty stuff involved with writing for the stage or whatever the thing is you want to do. There's usually some steps in the process where every time you go take a step, then you get a little bit more confident. Like, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now I took the time to learn it, and now I have a little bit more confidence. So my thing is, when I want to do something and it seems hard or scary, I just let myself hear the questions. What are all the questions that keep coming up? Okay, the thing is, the voice is saying, why do you think you can do that? Well, I got to ask the voice back. Why do you think I can't? What is it that I can't do? And then when I hear the what it is that you think I can't do, let me go look up the steps for how people do that. And then there might be some research. There might be some conversations with other people who've done it where I can learn all the things that I can't see. Because in that space where I can't see the stuff, that's the scary unknown stuff. Where if you just know it, the fear can like calm down.
Oh, that's good. That's so good. Yeah, I love that you use that voice as a signal for where you need to learn more, where you need to, because I've heard that explained that there's a curiosity gap. Like once we get to this point of like just starting, we think we have more capability than we do. Then we learn that we're not as capable, and so we drop down here, and that's where people are like, that's just not for me. I'm not good enough. Because that voice is telling you. I love that idea that you're saying, that just like use that as a cue, use that voice as a cue. Not that it's shaming you, but it's like challenging you to, hey, learn more, get better.
Yeah. That discomfort, you might find that it's got information in it for you about how to go on your learning path, or you might find it was absolute crap and it's some thing that your mom said to you when you were 5 years old and you never got over it. And then you're like, oh, well, now I have different work. I need to get over the wound that told me I wasn't good enough for stuff. But if you feel that discomfort and you just go dig at it and be like, well, what's going on here for real?
Yeah. That's so good.
It's helpful.
That's so good. Are you still doing comedy today or anything like that? Or have you moved on to bigger projects or?
So the comedy has been a little bit on pause just because I started figuring out all of these other like business things that I wanted to create, which I'm sure we'll get into, but not for long. My hope is that by the end of the summer, I'm back on stage, but my stage life has taken on so many more facets because once I said I want to put myself on stage, and I even had a chance, I narrated a concert for an opera singer I did the spoken word piece and I wrote poetry for it. And that was so fulfilling in a whole different way. That's poetry is probably the only thing I'm more scared of than
Oh,
comedy.
really? Oh, wow. Wow.
I didn't want to do it. The singer had to push me to do that,
Yeah.
to actually show my poetry. I'll read everybody
Yeah.
else's, but mine, my inner thoughts and such, that was really
Oh,
terrifying.
sure.
But once she pushed me to do it, I was so just thrilled again at making myself proud in that way and feeling pushed. But my stage performer life, I think, has blossomed in a way where comedy now has to share me with other
Yeah,
things.
and a lot, and some one of those other things right now is Hey Black Seattle, which is the new initiative you're starting and that you've started,
Yes.
and in the midst of right now we're in Black History Month as we record this. As we drop this, we'll just be on the tail end of it. Can you talk a little bit about that and what you're doing with Hey Black Seattle?
Yes, Hey Black Seattle is my new love. I'm completely in love with this work because it's like the culmination of so many different things that I've been a part of coming to build this centralized resource. And what it is a it's a massive
Mm-hmm.
database that I am building into a searchable website for Black residents of the Seattle area, the whole Seattle metro area, not just the city, to be able to find the cultural experiences and the community resources that they need to thrive in this area. The geography that we have here is very spread out.
Mm.
And over time, people have been kind of pushed out of the central city of Seattle. So folks are very dispersed. And because the percentage population of Black people here is probably as small as it's been in the last 50 years, relative to other communities here, it's a tough experience. You feel like you're like one of few and there's no one else here and it's hard for you to connect to community. But in actuality, even though it's a small percentage relative to others, there's 50,000 Black people in the city of
Mm.
Seattle, 195,000 in the county that I live in King County, and 350,000 Black people in the central Puget Sound area. So they're here, but it's hard to connect.
Right.
You have to have a different intentionality when you live in a city like Seattle to connect. And so what I've done with Hey Black Seattle is created a central information hub so that people can exercise that intentionality a little bit easier. Just go somewhere and search for the thing that you need. Have a place that tells you who are the organizations that are serving the community, where's the Black arts and culture stuff
Mm-hmm.
happening, Black sports groups, special interest groups of all kinds, all sorts of categories of information. And so that's what Hey Black Seattle is. And it's brand new. And so far, the support has been amazing. But I am so excited about this because I think it's really connecting to community and connecting to culture is going to be key to a lot of people feeling like they can fully live in their full self expression as Black people here in this area.
Yeah, well, and it sounds like such a great idea because I mean even in other cities, and I'll ask you in a second about maybe expansion and expanding into other cities because it sounds like something that a lot of other areas might need too, and very similar problems in other areas, or with regard to connecting and all of that. But thinking about what the needs of individuals are, and especially when you are from the background I have of addiction, recovery from alcoholism, I can imagine that coming from a community like the Black community or other communities that that it may be challenging to find that very specific type of
Yeah.
community of healing or community. So I could see the tremendous value that can come from that. Is that something that you're kind of trying to move toward in terms of bringing that kind of help and assistance to the community?
I love the way that you asked that question because that is very close to the heart of the work, and I'm glad that be, coming into this with the work that I've been doing for the last several years around the healing work that people need to do and what's really making life hurt, I bring that sensitivity to
Mm-hmm.
this. And so there are a lot of, I would say, Black business directories that popped up in the wake of, the racial reckoning that's happened. And it's needed because people are trying to support Black businesses and get them business. But I think that that's one angle of this particular issue. In that, what about the community piece of things? What about the space for the person who's like, I see a bunch of networking events, but the support that I need isn't around career. I need to find the group that's meeting because we're doing, there's addiction recovery, or I need to find disability resources. Those things, some that I don't see those coming up on that same type of directory resource, which is needed for the success of Black businesses, but we also need this community element as well. And I'm thinking to myself every day about what are the human needs that people have that aren't being met, and how can we support them in finding it. If what you need is, I'm a runner and I would love to run with other Black people, because for me, that's just where I'm going to feel more comfortable. I would like you to have the option to find where those folks are and it not take you years to stumble upon it,
Yeah.
or have to search for too long. Um, those are the types of things that I'm thinking about. I'm bringing a very community first approach to this. And it's going to also support the business elements of things as well, but it's really centered on what does the community
That's
need.
so great. I really love that, because getting that kind of support, it only lifts everybody up and lifts up the entire community and makes it stronger. So you're doing it. The work that you're doing on that is just amazing. And I'll ask, kind of getting to that question, is are there plans? I mean, I know kind of beginning stages. So, but are there plans to expand this into other cities and other regions of the country as you go forward?
That's a frequently asked question, I think, for folks. It's this is not a Seattle only issue.
Yeah.
I look at my life though in terms of, I'm not endeavoring to sit on top of an empire, and I think that I can only handle so much work,
Yeah.
and I'm close to just the proximity that I have and my access that I have to the people who are serving this area because I live here. That brings a different heart to this work than if I was to say I'm going to build Hey Black Tampa. I don't have the same community connections to go just like drive over to someone's spot and sit down and talk with
Yeah.
them about the community. So I think that while there could be an opportunity for me to license ideas and game plans and things to someone else, I think that the person who runs those types of things needs to have some sort of like connection to the community that they're building it for. And so for me, that can look like Seattle. I can probably handle building my relationships in a Portland. Tacoma is built into the Seattle site, but it could definitely handle its own kind of brand and version of this. But beyond what's happening in the Pacific Northwest, I think that I would need some sort of partner model where someone else is building Hey Black
Yeah.
Denver. Because I love the part of this where I'm in the
Yeah.
community and I'm actually holding hands with the people that I'm building it for.
Yeah, that's such a great approach. I mean, just build it and build it where you are and where and then from there just kind of grow it as you feel. But I see that this is that it's going to be such a great service to that community, to your community in Seattle, and I hope to see it grow in the future. And where can people find Hey Black Seattle?
Well, you can go to heyblackseattle.com and check it out. We are in the beginning stages, but I have seeded it with resources so people who would like to envision beyond a blank directory resource can see what the idea is there. But go to heyblackseattle.com, follow us on Instagram at heyblackseattle. And if you're actually interested in the other part of my life where I do the You Better workshops and the MCing, you can go to KieshaGarrison.com.
Yes, and do check it out. It's a great site. Tons of resources on there. Tons of really cool media clips, including an interview with Lenny Kravitz where she stumps him, which is awesome. And yeah, so check all of that out. And Kiesha, thank you so much for being here. This was a lot of fun. And like you'll check in with me about my stand-up comedy, I'm going to check in with you in the summertime and see if you're back at it.
Oh, wow. Boomerang,
Right.
You got me.
All right. Well, thank you, Kiesha. And to everybody out there, thank you so much for being here. Check out heyblackseattle.com. Check out Kiesha Garrison. And we will see you next time. Thanks. Thank you so much for joining me today on Flow Over Fear. If you are liking this show, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. That way you'll be first to know when I drop a new episode, including interviews or trainings or dad jokes. That's right, dad jokes. Add a little levity to your life. And if you liked this episode in particular and you think somebody can get something from it, please share it with a friend. And that way we'll spread the message together. Thanks again for joining me today. We'll see you next time.